So once again, I didn't want to rush into this kind of video because there was a lot to take in, and it totally wasn't due to the fact that I was actually working on another video already. Anyway, Tripwire have released a second update in the summer event beta, and honestly, I'm not too sure how I should feel about this update. They've rebalanced a fair few things, and overall the majority of it just doesn't feel right, and the rest of it points towards something that I will discuss later on in the video regarding the weapon upgrade system and the EDARs. But first off, let's get the biggest change out of the way. Well, when I say biggest, it's more like the biggest problem to me, and the first problem I have with this update is with the starter pistol, and well, it got nerfed. Now, this wasn't entirely surprising, as on all perks the sidearm became a very viable weapon. People argued that the sidearm didn't have enough ammo, but honestly I preferred it this way, as for perks like Commando and SWAT, having that extra bit of damage, including the buff from the perk intended, made the gun stand out as a good second switch instead of wasting time reloading your rifle or SMG. But like I mentioned, this gun got nerfed and it's fairly noticeable. The damage remains the same as 25 per shot, however the tier modifiers have been lowered, meaning tier 1 starts at 30 instead of 32.5, and then tier 5 being 50 instead of 62.5. And the nerf doesn't actually end here though, as both Commando and SWAT have had their perks known as fallback and close combat training have both been nerfed, with the damage dealt by the knife and pistol being nerfed from 110% to 50%. Now, from the notes Tripwire have left on the change log, it states that the 9mm pistol was never intended to be used as a primary weapon of choice. They were designed and intended as a backup weapon, and well, you know, that's fine, but the problem here I have is that these nerfs haven't had anything to really balance itself back out. In the first version of the beta, I'd keep some dosh aside to buff my pistol as a backup choice. With the low ammo pool at my disposal, it wasn't a weapon I could just fire willy-nilly like an MP7. Instead, I would use it for clearing up Zeds and Husks, and I would try to clean up the horde that was coming at me and reduce the heavy load of clots in my face, while using my main guns to then clear up the main mess. And for argument's sake, yes, I can still one-shot Zeds on most difficulties, but when it gets to the harder difficulties, it does require more shots than before. And with that lack of ammo, you're bound to run dry faster. While I do completely respect Tripwire's decision on this, they need to do a bit of compromise. You know, you could just like change the ammo a little bit, just give it a little bit more in compensation for it. Right, 9mm aside, let's move on to the next part of this update, and that is tier 4 weapons. As you might know, recently Tripwire confirmed that tier 4 weapons were being restored back to their rightful place. And they did! Well, kind of. Some of the weapons have been buffed while others have been reverted and nerfed. From checking the stats like a nerd, the microwave gun has been buffed slightly by increasing the base weight from 8 to 9 instead of reverting back to 10, but also increasing the stream damage from 14 to 16, and the alternative fire is still the same as before when it was buffed. From what I can see though, the ammo still costs 80 per mag instead of 100 as well, while on the other hand, weapons like the Eviscerator and the Doomstick have had the most nerfs. The Eviscerator has been nerfed to stop players from choosing this as the only endgame weapon of choice for the Berserker. I won't disagree with Tripwire, the Eviscerator was a fairly strong weapon, especially for a ranged Berserker, but I feel like you've done this the wrong way. Nerfing the Eviscerator hasn't really changed anything, as the alternatives are still a bit too weak against the bosses. Surely they should have really been buffed instead. It's definitely worth a thought at some point, Tripwire, but I feel like the Doomstick is more interesting to discuss, as the Doomstick has had its max ammo lowered, meaning the max shells you can carry are now 44 instead of 76. And the tier 5 damage buff from the weapon upgrade is pretty much pointless, which I'll get back to in a moment. And finally, the ammo cost has increased from 25 to 40 per mag. Now, this kind of nerf was expected, as originally the Doomstick carried way more ammo than the Boomstick. However, now it's actually less by roughly about 10 shells, which is a bit weird, and honestly, the appeal of this weapon has lowered for me, and that's for two reasons. Firstly, the ammo pool. However, Tripwire's reason for this is that the Doomstick was way too much of a powerhouse, which in all honesty, I can completely see where they're coming from. I mean, that gun is fairly strong even now. But the lack of ammo really just puts me off. It's still a good secondary shotgun, and you could easily pick up another gun. But funnily enough, there's a lower tier shotgun out there which can do roughly on par or debatably stronger damage, and that's the HZ12 multi-action shotgun. Now, you're probably just thinking, Ben, that's a tier 2 weapon. What the fuck are you on about? Well, let me delve deeper with this weapon and back my point. If we're going by stats provided over the Tripwire wiki, the HZ12 fires 10 pellets per shot and has a damage of up to 20 per pellet, so 200 per shot if all the pellets impact, while the Doomstick has 6 pellets per shot and only shoots out 36 per pellet, so up to 216 damage if all 6 pellets hit. So the Doomstick roughly has a teeny tiny bit higher damage with less pellets. But here's where things get a little bit more interesting, as the Doomstick is a tier 4 weapon, which means you can only upgrade it once. once, and this damage buff will only get you times 1.1, so 39.6 damage per shot. For making it easy, I'll just round it up to 40, so I'm actually looking at about 240 per shot. However, the HZ12 has 3 tiers of upgrades going up to 1.3, bumping up each pellet from about 20 to 26, and times that by 10 and you got 260 per shot, meaning currently the HZ12 is actually stronger than the Doomstick. Again, you could argue that the alt-fire of the Doomstick will pack a major punch, and yeah, you're right, but with only 44 shells in total, you're putting yourself at a major disadvantage by wasting it, while on the other hand you can carry pretty much over double the amount of shells with the HZ12 and do better damage. Jesus Christ, that was more detail than I normally go into. Fucking reading is boring. So pretty much from this discovery, this is how I see support now. I'd take a HZ12, keep my base shotgun, and then upgrade the HZ12 while using my pump shotgun to take out cannon fodder. And then while I get to the end of the game, I'll swap the pump out for another gun with the leftover money. Depending on the difficulty, this could either be an AA12 or a boomstick. I mean, you could still use a doomstick if you preferred, but then again, I would rather have ammo over damage at this point. Hey, Future Ben here. I realised while recording some gameplay that the M4 is actually even stronger than the HZ12, so I'm not really sure what Tripwire are trying to do with these weapons. I understand trying to balance the other weapons up to tier 5 to balance out with the tier 4s is a good idea, but you're basically just making the tier 4s pointless, and then you might as well just get a tier 2 and stick with that. Overall, the Doomstick isn't a useless weapon, nor is it bad, but for a tier 4, it's surprising that a tier 2 can do it better. Anyway, moving on to some of the more interesting changes with tier 4 weapons, the Railgun and the M99 AMR have also been altered in various ways. The M99 is now a tier 5 weapon with a reduced ammo of 21 instead of 31, however the weapon now costs 2,500 dosh with ammo costing roughly 50 dosh per mag. Now this makes the M99 feel more like it used to in Killing Floor 1, which is where I think it should have been in the first place. I like the changes to the M99 personally, so there's no complaints from me here. The Railgun, however, has been reverted back to tier 4 and then nerfed in the area of damage while being buffed in the sense of ammo. The designer notes from Tripwire state that they were aiming to kind of split the two guns into different playstyles, with the M99 being more of a high risk, high reward in sense of cost and also ammo, while the Railgun is better and a safer option for players who are a little bit less confident. And I honestly think it works that way, so overall I have no complaints in that department. And that's about it for most tier 4 weapons. The rest of them were just reverted back to normal with little to no changes, besides the Hemogoblin funnily enough, but I've never actually used that weapon because it just doesn't interest me. I'll look into it later. Well, besides the weapons that seem to be the main part of this update, we've had some tweaks and rebalances to the EDARs, which was obviously needed, but unfortunately I don't think this has actually defeated the problem. So to give you a quick rundown, the EDARs have had their armor health values lowered while having their generic health increased, which means they should technically be easier to kill, but it doesn't really feel any different. Yeah, the armor comes off quicker, but the health is still quite big now, so it takes just as long. You can kill them with a couple of shots, but compared to Zeds, they still take a bit too long to get killed, and most weapons don't really feel like they do much because of the armor. However, speaking of certain weapons, it's worth mentioning that fire damage has actually been made stronger against the EDARs, with fire damage vulnerability being increased, as well as microwave damage being increased even further. So firebugs are actually more viable against these guys, which is pretty good. Besides that, with the EDARs, the trapper's range has been reduced and also has been fixed so they can't get you through the wall anymore, which is already a blessing. And well, that's about it. The weapon upgrade system hasn't really been touched besides an exploit regarding akimbo's weapons being sold at higher value to get more dosh. I'm really hoping they address the current issues with the system before it goes live because it really does need changing. Instead of repeating myself again, I'm just going to leave a link to the previous video below so people can just get an idea from that of what I think the upgrade system should be like. But while writing this, I realised something about the weapon upgrade system as well as the EDARs when looking at it, and that's that they pretty much don't belong in the main game at all. They feel more like features that would be in the endless game mode. Take the weapon upgrade system for example. When playing the game on a standard match, you're probably going to upgrade the weapon at least once or twice. In endless, you're probably going to utilise that mechanic even more and upgrade more weapons, which would definitely help you get a high round similar to how zombies works in Call of Duty. With the EDARs, they could just be their own wave like the dogs. It feels like Tripwire actually want people to play and make games for the endless mode. This is probably the best direction to take, so pretty much take this system out, including the EDARs, and then add them into endless. It will confuse less players and give more time for people to adapt, fix and improve. Not only because of the EDARs and weapon upgrades, but also for the balance of the current weapons in Killing Floor. But at the end of the day, I'm just one guy on the internet. If you agree with me or think my comments are flawed, just leave a comment below. Besides that, that's all for now. I imagine there's probably going to be more updates before this thing goes live. Or at least I hope they do.